All of tonight's rescues are true stories. We've sometimes used actors or stuntmen, but everything you see and hear is based on the accounts of the people involved. They've helped us to reconstruct events as they happened. Tonight on 999, lost over the vast Atlantic, his instruments and radio destroyed by lightning, and there's a problem with the fuel. The last challenge on a day out on mountain bikes, just one tiny mistake put a rider's life on the line. And how Dr. Gareth Davies flew in to save a motorcyclist trapped under a lorry. These days, it's easy to take flying across the Atlantic for granted. You board a large, comfortable jet, you have dinner, you watch a film, maybe doze a bit, and a few hours later, you're in America. But how would you like to cross 1,700 miles of rough, unpredictable ocean in a little plane like this? Ferry pilots specialize in these long crossings. They're employed when an aircraft has to be delivered from America to Europe or vice versa. Even with modern navigational aids, these pilots stretch themselves and their aircraft to the limits. It's a 16-hour flight, and 3 times the usual amount of fuel has to be packed on board in special tanks. If these planes get into difficulties on this side of the Atlantic, then help is sent from Britain. But more than 150 miles from the coast is beyond the range of the rescue helicopters. For search and rescue operations further out to sea, the RAF has a highly sophisticated aircraft, the Nimrod, which can operate 1,000 miles from base and by refueling in midair can fly for 24 hours. A German doctor, Werner Solman, was ferrying a twin-engine Cessna from Canada to Ireland. On board were 2 extra tanks of fuel for the long journey.
My position is 51 north, 40 west. My altitude is 25,000 feet. Weather is clear, but there is a front ahead. Estimated time to Shannon, approximately 6 hours.
This was Werner's 8th solo crossing of the Atlantic. He was at the halfway mark when he flew into a violent storm. Controlling the small aircraft in severe turbulence was difficult enough, but suddenly he hit an even bigger problem. Werner felt his ears pop, warning him that he'd lost cabin pressure and would soon be unable to breathe. He immediately dived to a safe altitude of 10,000 feet. He then realized his vital satellite navigation system was dead. All he had to rely on now was an ordinary magnetic compass.
This is 62 Foxtrot. Is there anybody there?
The lightning had also blown his long-distance radio. His short-range system was his last hope.
This is 62 Foxtrot. Does anyone hear me?
98 Tango to 62 Foxtrot. I hear you loud and clear. Are you okay?
It was an extraordinary stroke of luck. Another German pilot flying on a similar route picked up his call.
98 Tango to 62 Foxtrot. Okay. We are flying in about the same direction. I will keep giving you my headings, and we try and work out exactly where you are, okay?
You are approximately 750 or 800 miles away from any land. It's 800 miles back and 800 miles ahead, so you are really in the middle of nowhere. And it would be many, many flying hours to reach the next land.
Werner continued his journey on a bearing that he hoped was the right one to get him safely to Ireland. The alarm was raised hundreds of miles away in northern Scotland. At RAF Kinloss, a Nimrod was scrambled to search for the tiny plane.
The Nimrod carries a crew of 13 people, 2 pilots and a flight engineer, 2 navigators and an air electronics officer. Normally the crew would get airborne in less than 1 hour, on average 20 minutes, 25 minutes from the moment they're scrambled.
Our call sign is Rescue 5-1. He's at flight level 135, doing 195 knots, and at the time time of the strike, 090 magnetic.
We had the information before he took off that he was struck in this position by lightning. We knew his intended track and speed, and therefore, had he stayed on that track, we knew that we'd be able to intercept him at this point. So we simply set off from Kinloss and go in a direct line to where we expect to meet him.
But with help still hours away, Werner faced another problem.
62 Foxtrot to 98 Tango. I have a problem with my fuel.
Main tanks are nearly empty and there's no pressure to pump the fuel from the ferry tank through to the wheels.
The electric pump does not work. I'm going to run out of fuel.
How much do you have left?
About 20 minutes flying time, I think. I don't think I'm going to make it. If I land in the sea, I will drown. I can't get out of the plane because the ferry tanks are in the way, and I don't have a hammer to smash my way out. I had a talk with my girlfriend before I left St. John's. And we are about to be married.
I give you my phone number. Please call her.
Her name is Angelica. Tell her I love her.
It was almost like all his life was running in front of him like a film, and that film was kind of coming to an end. The only thing for him to continue flying was to get somehow the fuel problem solved, and Werner had to go to the back of the airplane. With all his other electrical problems, I was concerned that the autopilot might not be able to fly the airplane correctly. I just had to hope that eventually he would come back on the radio and I would hear his voice again.
It was a risk to rely on the autopilot, but Werner had just 10 minutes to replace the burnt-out cables to the fuel pumps if he was to stand any chance of surviving. The crew of the Nimrod had no idea of his exact position.
It became very, very frustrating. We were searching for one man in a tiny aeroplane in a huge expanse of airspace. The similarity between a needle and a haystack is quite apt.
By now, Werner had just seconds left before his plane ran out of fuel and fell out of the sky.
To 90 Tango. I fixed the pump. Fuel is reaching the engines.
90 Tango. It's good to hear you again.
I was so relieved when I heard his voice. I was aware that I might have been the last person he ever was speaking to.
Werner was probably some 60 miles behind Eckert. We therefore started a search down behind Eckert for 60 to 100 miles. When we didn't find him there, we stepped down to the line where we expected Werner to be.
They didn't find him there either, but they did at last make radio contact.
62 Foxtrot, this is Rescue 51.
Q51, I hear you loud and clear.
Good evening, 62 Foxtrot. This is Rescue 51, Royal Air Force Nimrod. We should be with you in approximately 15 minutes. I'm looking for your radar. Looking for you on radar, and I've been listening to your conversation for the past 30 minutes or so.
And for radar, nearest contact 256 is bearing 143 at 17 miles.
Although the Nimrod crew had now successfully made radio contact, it was another 2 hours before they spotted a small plane on their radar.
Okay, we have a radar contact. Just to make certain it's you, if you can fly one 360-degree orbit, then resume your course.
To save flying over there and visually identifying him, we asked him to do a maneuver on the radar to positively identify who it was.
I'm doing a 360 to my right, sir.
Roger, 51, thanks very much.
62 Foxtrot, I still get your beeps, and I'm now turning into 270.
Roger.
It should have been an easy maneuver, but as Werner made the turn, his plane began to go out of control.
Something happened to my autopilot. My plane is mad now. Can't switch it off and it does what it likes.
To be honest, because I'd asked him to do it, I almost felt that it was my fault. It was not a nice moment.
No more 360s, sir.
Copy that, 51.
There was nothing we could do about this. And yet here we were, with a guy on the other end of the radio in severe difficulties. It was one of the quietest moments on a Nimrod I've heard for a long time.
As Werner stabilized the aircraft, he realized that more of his instruments had failed.
62 Foxtrot, I believe that I have the airplane under control now, but the autopilot does not work anymore.
Meanwhile, the Nimrod crew were puzzled. The plane they'd spotted on the radar hadn't shown any sign of going out of control. They soon realized they'd found Eckhart. Werner was still lost.
I felt really bad that it was me they identified, and still we didn't know where he was.
62 Fox on Rescue 51.
62 Fox, go ahead.
The way that your bearings are showing now, it looks as if you are now further north than we thought you were.
It was obvious that he had a compass problem. He was between 150 and 180 miles north of the position that we expected him to be in, which meant that for every 2 miles that he thought he was flying east, he was actually flying 1 mile north.
The danger was that Werner's faulty compass would steer him so far off course he'd miss land completely. The RAF made complex calculations to compensate for the error and managed to pinpoint his exact location.
This is Rescue 51, standby 1. We'll just make sure that if you were talking to positively sure, we're switching our lights on and we'll fire some green flares. So just make sure that you can see us and we'll get you home.
We needed to get close enough to him so that we could positively identify him. We also wanted him to see us because it is a great psychological boost.
After 3 hours of searching, they saw each other and both headed for Shannon. But Werner's problems were still not over.
I have one more doubt. With all this equipment that has been blown in my plane, I might not be able to pull my landing gear out.
Okay, Rescue 51, copied that.
There was the concern that the landing gear either might not extend or might collapse, and we had to prepare for some kind of an accident during landing. The only way to find out if the landing gear would work or not would be once he landed.
Eckhart watched helplessly as Werner prepared to land at Shannon. As he approached the runway, he released the landing gear. 3 green lights appeared, lights that usually reassure the pilot that his landing gear is down and locked. But none of the electrics on Werner's plane could now be trusted. If it hadn't locked, he'd crashed.
There was an enormous sense of relief. It had taken him longer than we would have liked to find him in the first place. It had been a fairly long flight into Shannon, and a tense one. We'd almost lost him at least twice. So to know that the guy had actually landed was fantastic.
At that stage, I had had my part of adrenaline for a week. I was so happy that everything had worked. I was paralyzed. I just didn't know what to do. I thought, now, you tempted it once too much. You pushed your luck. You've had it.
Eckhart?
Eckhart was my guardian angel, I think. He was there at the right time, and we have already become friends.
Well, we made it.
We had a Guinness, and we talked it over. It was a hell of an experience. It makes you think. I see so many people with sicknesses and injuries which they have not deserved, and me taking chances. I survive. In a way, it's not correct, is it?
Mountain biking's become a highly popular sport, and as bike technology has become more and more sophisticated, then more and more riders want to test their ability in open countryside off the beaten track. In our next story, 4 friends were on a day out enjoying the challenges of off-road biking on the Sussex Downs, when one of them, who's played here by a stuntman, had an accident the others could do no more than contain.
as a challenge, often a little bit of competition. It really is a good way to let off steam. Going down steep tracks and steep hills at speed does give, you know, a sense of exhilaration. Obviously, you have to bear in mind safety, but normally you can see way ahead. If you can't see around the bend, then it really isn't safe to go too fast. We had been cycling for some 4 hours, and it really was time for us to head home. We were all getting a little bit tired, so we turned off up into the downs again, and we were making our way up to gain height, then drop down the other side in towards Brighton.
Hang on, Neil, I'll get a crane for you to help you. Come along, Commander.
Peter Dickens, a local GP, was leading the ride that day. He knows the South Downs well. His 3 friends included Neil Tully, who's a surgeon, and a drugs representative, Martin Back.
Go on, Martin.
Martin was very au fait with all the, you know, the new type of bikes that are coming in, the tyres, whereas I'm not interested in that aspect of mountain biking as such.
Hey.
He was clearly very enthusiastic, far more enthusiastic than I am about it, in fact, and also a better mountain biker than I am.
Oh, that's a bit radical, isn't it? Really serious.
We came to this gravel pit. It was like a little, you know, oasis for us, and it was like the cherry on top of the cake for a really good afternoon out.
Have we got time? We're meant to be getting back. No, let's go for it.
Oh, okay, all right.
Off you go. Go on then, Pete. Lead in the front.
When we were at the edge of the quarry, the others were, I think, almost in a way competing with each other, and I think they thought that I was a little bit of a coward in that I was not at all keen to go down.
I'm not that keen, actually. I think I'll go down and check it out first, okay? Okay, off you go.
It was almost a bit like an optical illusion in that it all looked very safe and flat. However, on climbing down, I realised how steep it was. And after kicking away the debris, I looked back up and it just wasn't a safe option.
It's too steep. Forget it.
I think that was perhaps taken as a challenge. It certainly wasn't meant as a challenge. The competitive element to mountain bike is a problem. And I think it was the competitive element that did in fact make us even contemplate going down that track. And in particular, Martin's competitive attitude to it, to make him go first. I had to literally jump aside as he came past. He hit the first terrace and actually took off. He took off and actually landed the bike, but unfortunately he landed it as the second terrace began. He had effectively projected himself in front of the bike, and he landed on his face and forehead. The moment he hit the ground, he started to convulse, and I turned round, shouted to Neil to come down straight away, and that he was looking like he'd hurt himself quite badly.
Neil, he's fitting.
The basic raw panic feeling that one had in that situation was that I just hope he doesn't die. That was the primal feeling of anxiety that literally was taken over by the need to do something. But I have been in many tight situations in my career, but I don't think I've ever felt that such a deep anxiety as I did that day. We were there in the middle of nowhere, and even if we were able to stabilise him, how were we going to get him out of that quarry?
Okay, just come up here, come give me a hand. Right, I've got his airway. Can you get your jacket on?
The doctors were familiar with, you know, managing these type of problems within a hospital situation. But it's entirely different when you're presented with a similar problem in an environment where you haven't got the facilities available to you. That day in the quarry, we didn't have the tools of the trade.
we were there alone with no equipment, and it really was very much back to basics.
Turn that leg over, coma position. That's it, sideways. Okay, look, I'll get help, okay? You all right? Yep, I've got it, Peter.
Peter's local knowledge proved to be vital. He knew his only hope of getting help to Martin quickly was to try and raise the alarm at a pub on the edge of the quarry. To his relief, he spotted the landlady in the car park 150 feet below him.
Hello! There's been an accident up here! Please get an ambulance, quickly! Thank you!
There's a man falling down the pit.
There were some 12-year-old boys playing nearby on bicycles, and I managed to send them off in different directions so that when the ambulance was trying to find access to the quarry, they would be able to wave it up and point it in the right direction.
Now scatter, hurry.
We got second location on this, not happy with the original message. Only there's two directions we can go. And if we commit ourselves at this junction, then we will be losing quite a bit of time. Over.
But they didn't lose any time. Peter's team of young cyclists pointed the ambulance in the right direction. And despite the remote location of the accident, the crew arrived within 10 minutes of being called out.
We decided, my colleague and I, that we're going to move this guy out of here was via helicopter.
Lima 1 to Martin Control, do you read? We request an airlift by Hotel 900. Over.
Whilst I was there with him, his eyes disappeared into the top of his head, so only the whites were showing, much like a mama doll when you tip it up. I hadn't seen that phenomena before. Gave me cause for concern that perhaps he was regressing.
We've maintained his airway, I've been keeping his jaw forward, there've been no airway problems at all, we've cleaned his mouth.
So, having checked him out for breathing and so forth, the obvious thing is to stabilise his neck. So we put a collar on him.
Okay, it's not long now. Not long now. That's done. Stop the jacket.
The team had done all they could to make Martin comfortable. It was now down to the rescue helicopter and Mike Wells, the paramedic on board.
As Martin had, in my opinion, sustained an injury to his spine, I was particularly concerned that we shouldn't move his spine in the slightest degree. On the helicopter we carry a backboard, which is the ideal piece of equipment to use for somebody with serious trauma, injuries, especially spinal injuries.
Okay, Martin, we'll soon have you in the helicopter.
Without doubt, Martin was very lucky to have his friends and people around him. Had he been on his own on his bike, fallen, and nobody had seen him, he probably would have sustained very serious injuries, if not death.
Right, log roll towards me, on 3, 2.
And there were all sorts of emotions passing. There was feelings of guilt, that perhaps we were all responsible for placing him into this situation and we should have been perhaps more sensible. And there's a feeling of guilt also that you've gone out and done your hobby and you've had to call upon the rescue services to get you out of a situation that you've created when their need in other situations is far greater.
Hang on.
Attending incidents where people cause their own problems can be, to a certain degree, annoying, but one should never be judge and jury, because who can say that we won't be in that position at some time or other? We're all only human.
Martin was taken to Eastbourne General Hospital, where he spent 4 days in intensive care because of the severity of his head injury. He still has regular brain scans to check on his condition. So far, they've revealed no long-term damage, but he lives with the fear that his convulsions could return one day.
I'd been like everybody else that I speak to subsequently and laughed at the people in these strange egg box crash helmets and seriously wondered how a piece of polystyrene could do anything whatsoever to protect me. But the one thing that really disturbed me after the accident was when I got home and my friend Maggie had bought my crash helmet and my bicycle home for me from the scene of the accident. And I saw what was left of my crash helmet, and it was in pieces and covered in blood. And that quite shook me up.
and very much made me aware of the importance of wearing a good quality crash helmet. I think perhaps looking back at the time, it was beyond my ability. Now I would know this, but hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Martin was extremely lucky to escape serious injury that day in the quarry. Every year, 90,000 cyclists have accidents involving head injuries, and more than 150 of them die. The helmet that Martin was wearing clearly played a significant part in protecting his head. Yet while motorcyclists are required by UK law to wear crash helmets, the same isn't true of cyclists, even though it seems common sense to have something between your head and the ground if you fall. When buying a cycle helmet, always make sure it's got a safety standard mark inside. If the helmet doesn't have one of these 3 labels, it's unlikely to have been tested at all. As well as looking for the safety mark, it's important to make sure your helmet fits properly. Try it on before you buy and adjust the inside straps for a snug fit. The simple rule is that if it comes off easily with the strap done up, then it's too big. An ill-fitting helmet could be as bad as no helmet at all in the event of an accident. Always wear your helmet correctly. It should sit above the eyebrows and leave your ears free. It should have good all-round visibility and have good ventilation. Always replace your helmet if it's damaged in an accident. Any weakness will reduce its protection. Rosper suggests you buy a new helmet every 3 to 5 years, just because of normal wear and tear. But remember, wearing a helmet is no substitute for a real awareness of cycling safety. Most accidents involving cyclists happen when the roads are busiest, in the morning and evening rush hours. Always make sure you can be clearly seen. Wear bright or fluorescent clothing during the day, and at night always wear reflective tabard, armbands or anything bright. You can also improve the visibility of your bike. It's a legal requirement to display a rear reflector at all times and to use front and rear lights at night. You may only be fined between £30 and £50 if you get stopped without lights, but as the police say, the maximum penalty is death. Make sure you can be heard. Put a bell on your bike so that you can let other road users know you're there. Also, get trained. Every year, local councils throughout the country help more than 300,000 children learn about cycle safety, and they can offer training courses for adults too.
During this series of 999, we're following the work of Dr. Gareth Davies and paramedic Alan Norman of the Helicopter Emergency Medical Service, known as HEMS. The HEMS helicopter is the only one based in London exempt from Civil Aviation Authority restrictions on landing sites. The pilots are very experienced at touching down in tight spots like Piccadilly Circus or among the pigeons in Trafalgar Square, so much so they make it look as easy as parking a car. In their first rescue mission tonight, the team were called to a serious accident right here on one of London's busiest streets, the Cromwell Road. Rush hour traffic was brought to a standstill as the box junction behind me here was turned into a makeshift helipad. Everything you're about to see was recorded as it happened, and everyone involved has given their consent for the film to be shown.
We sit here for 12 hours a day, so we can't rub each other up the wrong way. We've got to be able to get on.
Save lives without a doubt, and if we weren't there, the patient would probably have died, and I'm sure there's lots of people. I'm very glad to see us, even though that it must be very distressing at the time.
Stop. Yeah. Turn right. Turn your way, please. Okay, that way. That's it. That's fine. Lovely. Okay. You happy there? Yep, I'm happy. Okay. There you go. Thank you, guys.
Guys, as you can see under there's a motorcyclist who's gone underneath the lorry here. He's unconscious, barely breathing. He's strapped by his legs. We're going to jack the lorry up and get him out and start to work on him as soon as possible.
a base of skull fracture and he's bleeding from both ears. His respirations are really poor, so we need to put him to sleep. And that will help oxygenate his body in total, that including the brain, which is the most important part. At the moment, his right leg's trapped under between the lorry and the motorbike, but basically his head is the major problem.
I find it very fulfilling to work with the doctor on here, because they do help us in what we're doing, and we get the satisfaction of what we can do on scene and do to the patient prior to him to get into hospital.
Alright, do you want to support his arm?
So we're just going to get you out from under here now.
I think I've got to know basically what he's thinking before he actually asks what he wants, especially at the scene of the accident. You know, I've got to be aware of what's going on myself and the condition of the patient. You want to know the blood pressure, which is the most important thing that we do need firstly when we turn up on scene on the patient. So obviously one of my first jobs is actually put the monitoring on.
Can we just cut all these clothes off?
So I'll try and be one step ahead of him, so it just runs really smoothly, you know, rather than get the hiccups and sort of Gareth having to ask me every 2 minutes exactly what he wants.
His blood pressure and his pulse are reasonably stable at the present time. We'll go by land ambulance to Charing Cross. We'll intubate him now.
Hello?
Hi. Right, shall I nip in and tell the trauma leader? Okay.
Gareth's travelled in the ambulance with Jason, the motorcyclist. At the hospital, he hands over to the casualty department.
Good morning. Team leader. Who's team leader? Team leader.
Jason's treated here until it's safe for him to be transferred to his local hospital, where he continues to recover. For Gareth and Alan, the next job is to meet up with the helicopter nearby.
Okay, we're finished at Charing Cross now. Can we meet you at Lily Park in about 5 minutes?
Once again, the fact that they can land absolutely anywhere proves very convenient.
Sometimes we find a nice park, you know, even a small park. People are very reasonable about it, but there are times when you might blow a sign down, or I mean, children in little those baby walkers or whatever they call them, those little baby pram things. They go like they go at about 40 miles an hour.
I think you'll have a certain amount of sense of humour, really, because otherwise dealing with this every day of the week would certainly get to you after a long period of time. Because we are going to most seriously injured, be affecting an adult or a child, and we've got to cut ourselves off from that.
I go left?
Yeah, you can go left 10. 15 if you want.
What was that, 3 there? That'll do.
The next job for Alan and Gareth is a child. 11-year-old Patrick has been hit by a car on his way home from school.
In a team like this, the divisions become very small indeed, that Al and the rest of the HEMS paramedics can do an awful lot of what the doctors can do for the patient. If he sees me doing a certain job, putting a needle into somebody's arm to put up a drip, I don't need to ask him to run through a drip. I turn around and he's already done it and I don't have to ask him.
Patrick's been injured in a street near his home. While Gareth and Alan are doing everything possible to help him, they're also aware that Patrick's family and friends are anxiously waiting to find out if he's going to be all right.
I will have a word with Dad. Patrick has sustained quite a nasty head injury to the back of his head. Yeah. And what I want to do is take him back in the helicopter to the Royal London Hospital, where they specialise in this sort of problem, and it's the quickest way of getting there. And they specialise in that sort of injury, so it's the best place to take him. Okay. He's reasonably stable at the present time. He doesn't appear to have injured himself anywhere else, but we need to give him a thorough check over as soon as we get to hospital and do a scan of his brain. Okay? Hi, it's Gareth. We've got a patient for you, an 11-year-old male who's been hit by a car, has a Glasgow coma score of 7. He'll be coming in intubated and ventilated. Appears to be an isolated head injury at the present time.
They got into the hospital within 7 minutes, and he was worked on the ground even before he got to the hospital. At that time, they couldn't tell us if there would be any damage to his brain, but, I mean, he's been fantastic.
They had to stop my breathing so they could put on the life support machine, and I was in a coma for 5 days.
It's absolutely a miracle, and for the expertise of the doctors and the nurses and for the helicopter, he won't be here today.
Most of us would have seen a child choking on something they've eaten. It happens often enough. And while it may be terrifying to watch, it can be dealt with quickly and easily if you've got the right knowledge. Small children will put almost anything into their mouth. Not just sweets and nuts and crisps, but toys, building blocks, even pen tops. In fact, it happens so often with pen tops that for the last 2 or 3 years, the manufacturers have been putting holes in the top. So if it gets lodged in the throat, you can carry on breathing. Even so, around 7,000 children a year are taken to hospital after choking accidents. Our lifesaver this week is Tom Beattie, who's an experienced doctor at the Royal Hospital for Sick Children in Edinburgh. He's used to emergencies at work, but it was a lot more difficult at home when his 18-month-old daughter Lucy started to choke.
It started as a fairly normal Saturday. I'd been at work that morning, had arrived home a little bit late because I'd been on call, and we all went through to have lunch together. Lucy had been asleep and had wakened up, and we carried her through, and I put her in the high chair. Emma was sitting beside her eating a packet of crisps for her lunch, and, as she'd done many times before, put some crisps on Lucy's tray. Lucy picked them up and was eating them. I wasn't paying too much attention to it when suddenly I heard some funny noises coming from Lucy's direction, and beside me there was my little girl going blue. It was very, very difficult to maintain any semblance of calm. I think at that stage, all thoughts of being a doctor or anyone else went out the window. This was my own flesh and blood. I was absolutely petrified. There was my precious little child going to die in front of me. I know that I struggled to apply everything that I teach, to turn her upside down and to hit her back slowly, firmly, 5 times. I do know that somewhere along the sequence of blows, some mashed up crisps came out. So she had obviously choked on these. I've never been so happy in all my life. It was unbelievable.
The Yorkshire Moors have some of the most dramatic scenery in Britain, which gives horse riders the chance to trek across miles and miles of rugged countryside. One Sunday in early spring, a group led by a local stable girl, Sarah Rodley, set out to cross Langbar Moor near Otley. When they set off, the conditions were perfect, but as the day wore on, Sarah found herself at the centre of a rescue which was hampered by the very isolation that had drawn them to the moor in the first place.
A farm near to where the incident happened is called World's End, and to a complete stranger that probably sums it up. It is the World's End. There is nothing there.
Well, there are lots of bogs around, so you have to watch out for the bogs, because otherwise the horses could get stuck. It is quite cold in the day, and the winds are very strong up there, but at night the temperature drops a lot, and it does get much more windy.
Any moorland, particularly Langbar Moor, at this time of the day, in fading light and falling temperatures, is a completely hostile place.
14-year-old Sarah Rodley was leading a trek across Langbar Moor. One of the riders was Liz Brooke.
Sarah went first, then my husband Graham, and the other little girl, and I was to follow up last. And all I could think of at that time is, oh, when I get back, I'd love to buy this mare. It was absolutely super. Sarah said, we'll meet up halfway and check everybody's safe, because it was such a long ride. But what I didn't know is that the trekking horses all know where to stop. They've done it before, and it just more or less stopped dead.
Are you okay? What happened?
I can't move. I'm back.
I immediately thought to myself, wow, I've done it this time. Being a former nurse, I realised that I'd injured myself pretty badly.
I'll go for help. Come with me.
Sarah and one of the others on the trek rode off the moor to find a phone and call for help. Navigating their way along unfamiliar country lanes, it took the ambulance crew 15 minutes to meet up with them on the edge of the moor.
It was obvious as soon as we pulled up that there was no way that the ambulance would leave the road.
Can you ride?
Well, I've ridden once many years ago. It was paramount to get there quickly. So when I was invited to use the horse as a means of getting there, I didn't really stop to question it.
Hold on to the front of the saddle. That's it.
It had been over 30 years since I actually sat in a saddle. It's true to say I was frightened. I'm not afraid to admit that. The horse suddenly decided to take off at a rate of knots that I wasn't prepared for. I'd ignored the first principle of my training, which was to avoid further danger. I was shocked, but just glad that I was actually still in the saddle.
Okay, let's
go for it.
Take it, come on.
I was worried about him falling off because he hasn't ridden for so long, but he managed to hang on, and he was I think he was a bit scared then. But once we got going across the moor, he did really well.
Just hang on.
Hello, I'm Derek.
I'm Graham, and this is my wife Lizzie. She's had a tumble. She's fallen off the horse.
Hello, Lizzie. Whereabouts do you hurt?
I was so relieved to know that somebody that knew what they were doing had arrived, and for an ambulance man to actually arrive on horseback, it was simply amazing to me.
Not going to hurt you? No. She'd obviously suffered some spinal injury. You'll be okay. She was unable to move, was obviously petrified and in shock, and was very, very cold.
Sarah, can you ride back to Roger and tell him it's a possible serious back injury?
Derek and Roger were now separated by miles of desolate moorland. Sarah was their only means of communication.
Right, Liz, you're doing very, very well.
Every now and again the pain got to me, and I'd just let out a sob. And the cold was another thing. My teeth were chattering, so every time my teeth chattered, it was jarring my back as well. I was worried about what would happen when it began to get dark.
As night fell, Sarah made 8 trips across the moor, passing vital messages between the two men. Roger tried to organise a helicopter. When that failed, he called out a Land Rover ambulance. Knowing it would take another hour to arrive, Roger decided to walk across the moor to join his partner.
I knew that the ambulance had to come back this way, and I was mentally trying to make a picture of the smoothest part. Not that there is any smooth part on a moor, but I knew it would be a slow job getting her off the moor.
Well, by this time, Liz had been lying on the moor, motionless, for over 3 hours. Hypothermia is a very, very strong possibility, and of course we all know it can have fatal consequences. This is Liz, Roger. This is Graham, Liz's husband.
Hello, Liz. Hello, Graham.
I'm glad you brought me the blanket. I'm worried about hypothermia.
I put my jacket on her.
Sarah, can you ride back to the road and wait for the arrival of the Land Rover ambulance?
Yeah.
Liz's condition continued to deteriorate as the temperature fell, but at last they could see that help was finally on its way.
What's that?
That could be it.
Let's hope it is. We were very relieved to see the lights of the ambulance in the distance. We saw this silhouette of a horse and a young girl.
It's quite eerie, really.
The rough terrain meant the Land Rover was constantly in danger of turning over. Sarah was straining to spot obvious ruts and boulders in its path before giving the driver precise directions.
I was quite scared, and the horse was a bit scared as well. Even though I took them the way that I thought was best, it still managed to get stuck in a few ditches and bogs. But I just waited for it, and we managed to get there in the end.
This was the most dangerous part now.
It is,
I mean, while Liz was laid there, even though she was cold, there was no movement taking place. We knew the danger time for Liz was that
when we moved.
When we start to move her. The ambulance had to come off the moor very slowly. No speed. It couldn't come fast because of the terrain, so I had to walk in front of the ambulance with a torch, pointing out the ruts and the dips and the rabbit holes.
Edging forward at walking pace meant it took almost an hour for the ambulance to cross the moor.
Right a little, right.
Once in hospital, Liz discovered she'd broken her pelvis and damaged her spine. But after a 5-week convalescence, she was much better.
I'm happy that everybody got off the moor safely. To hear that Liz has made a good recovery. I like happy endings.
tonight at 9 on UK TV Style. Ty and the Extreme Makeover team transform another deserving family's lives. It's a brand new home edition series, so get your fix on Style. Next on People, more drama at the airport.